This is the Bottom Shot Podcast.
Pulvereri is up high. They come out of turn number 4. Stutter between the turns. The fans come to their feet.
It is Ted Christopher still in command. Keith Rocco right there on his back bumper.
Bringing Stafford Motor Speedway's past and present together.
They are side by side running for the finish line. It's a photo finish.
Deep into turn number 3. He goes in deeper than most. Christopher is in trouble. It is Keith Rocco to slingshot to the bottom, and he'll take down the win.
A Stafford Motor Speedway production where we will hear from the personalities from the past and present that found success on the legendary half-mile oval.
The scoreboard shows goose eggs as they wait. It's Pulvereri. He wins it by inches over Richie Evans in the Spring Sizzler.
Unbelievable chain of events.
Now, here are your hosts, Paul Arute and Kyle Rickey.
Welcome to the Bottom Shot Podcast here from, it's usually the Stafford Motor Speedway. Kyle Rickey and track COO Paul Arute. This is our first quarantined episode of the Bottom Shot Podcast. I'm here in Killingly, Connecticut. Paul, how are things at the Speedway? I see you've been let into the studio.
I'm in the studio. I am keeping my social distance to the rest of the team here, but you know, it sucks. This all sucks, but we're trying to stay positive and stay safe as best that we all can. But still coming in every day or as much as possible and doing some painting. We're gonna paint the whole place. We're just gonna paint every single building and wall, and we're gonna just spruce it up the best that we can. And then hopefully by the end of May or possibly June, or who knows, we'll be back.
Let's hope the end of May right now. So you're saying when we do open up, place is going to look brand new. I saw some pictures on social media. You've been going to town.
Yeah, I always like to paint because you get that immediate satisfaction of the painting. The place is painted, it's done, it's nice. So yeah, we're painting some stuff. We're taking care of the property. It feels very strange to be April 9th or 10th, and we're not going flat out to get to the Sizzler, which just feels so weird, which I imagine it's the same across the board in any business, but staying positive. It's hard to do every day, but it's all we can do.
As of right now, and we understand this can change with governor executive orders, but as of right now, April 9th, what does the schedule look like as far as opening night and that Sizzler weekend at the end of May?
Yeah, so we adjusted everything. This is now probably a month ago.
Yep.
We adjusted the Sizzler's been pushed back to May 30th and 31st, which is the last weekend in May. So that's still well over a month away. Opening night is going to be May 22nd, which is just a normal a Friday night, which is it's never a normal Joe at Stafford, but it's a normal night. SK is in all our typical divisions, and we do have a practice scheduled for May 8th. So that's obviously all to be determined. It could change tomorrow or today, but that's our current plan. And I keep telling everyone, I'm like, this place has been here since 1870, survived the wars, other pandemics, the Spanish influenza, the swine flu, the H1N1. We're all still here, the 2008 crisis. So at the end of it, it might take a month, it might take 10 months, but it'll still be here at the end, and we'll get out on track and we'll keep it going. And I think everyone just has to stay positive the best that they can, and hopefully this ends quick.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that racetrack has seen a lot. The property has been there for a long time, and we'll get through this. And as the tagline has been on all the news stations, we're all in this together, and that we are. But like always, Stafford Motor Speedway making the best of a tough situation. iRacing has obviously, in years and really in the last 6 weeks, when all this started at the beginning of March. It has really taken off. And Stafford jumped on board, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but before the first event, 50 plus drivers have signed up, like actual Stafford drivers, not iRacing drivers. How many? 60? That's 60. Unbelievable. And these are drivers from street stocks, limited late models, SK Light modifieds and SK modifieds and Tour modifieds that run at Stafford that are participating in Friday night competition. You have to be thrilled with how quickly this came together and the success of it in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. It's still, to me, I know I'm starting to come around to it, but it's still a video game. But I'm enjoying getting something on online so that like the fans can get some action. But yeah, we've had 60 drivers try to qualify for 26 spots last Friday, which is pretty crazy. I actually had to turn drivers away because it's capped at 60 per the platform. And then yesterday we just did our first prelim night for any non-Stafford drivers or crew members or if you're a fan, you can compete. Pretty much it's open to anyone. There were 60 guys in that as well. So it's pretty cool. And I think just the racing has been a little choppy at times. We've adjusted the structure of the night. So now, we've ended up under caution twice, which is definitely a downer. But supposedly our green-white checkers has been improved in it because there was just every time we attempted to have that in the software has a bug or something that it just crashes the session. So both events have ended under a caution, which everyone was pissed about, including myself and my dad. The first call I got was, "This is unbelievable. This can't end under caution." I'm like, okay, yeah. Do you want to be a software developer and try and solve this? Like, come on, man. But
I get it.
Yeah. Supposedly it's improved, and we're going to try again on this Friday, 7:00 on our YouTube channel again. Bonsa and Jeff have been doing a great job on the show. Yeah, it's been fun.
How many? We have 2 left. It was originally a 3-race series. Last week was the first in the series. 2 weeks ago was kind of the trial, the one that Teddy Hodgson won. Brian Narducci won last week. Couple of weeks left, and then we'll see where we are at that point. Yeah,
so we have the 10th is this Friday, and then the 17th is our last one in this schedule. And also have a great sponsor that jumped on all phases, outdoor construction. He does everything from patios to pools and all that. His name's Larry. He actually is the car owner of Matt Swanson's tri-track car. So he's excited about it too. And he sponsored the next 2 events. We're going to have a purse paying out the top 3, which is cool. We're paying out a video game, which is wild, but
it's not a video game.
Sim racing game.
So they say.
But it's like, I guess everything's a game, right? So it's a game. It's a sports game. But it's sponsored.
Your brother is involved. He's got the sim. He's had a tough couple of weeks as well.
It's the show last week.
Yes. When are you jumping on board?
Not jumping on board.
No?
I used to do it. I tried maybe a handful of times in my life. This is back 2010, 2011.
Okay.
Early days of iRacing. I'm just not good at it. And I also, this is going to sound like I'm a wimp here, but I get motion sickness from the freaking games. Like when I play games, I kind of get like queasy.
I'm with you.
I just can't do it. I guess I never really played any kind of video games like my whole life. So I probably if I did it more, I'd adjust to it. But I went to our partners down at Spark VR and I went on the virtual, which is a whole different ball game than just a computer. I did maybe 5 laps, spun out twice, and I had to go get like a ginger ale from their bar because I thought I was going to puke.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not getting on the sim.
So 10 years ago, I did the same thing. It was about 2010. Went out, got a desktop computer, monitor, pedals, wheel. My problem was I'd go to bed every night like pissed off. Like I'd get dumped and I didn't have this is again 10 years ago. I didn't have the fancy headset and the microphone, and I had people screaming at me, and my only way to communicate back was to type on the chat, which I could barely drive, never mind type and drive. So I have not been on since. I got all this equipment. It has sat around for 10 years now.
Sounds like you got to get back on. You have all the gear.
I've thought about upgrading the gear. Actually last night I was pricing some stuff out. So,
you might be having to come back then.
That is what this quarantine has come to for me. So we'll see.
And odds are I'll probably, if this goes till, call it end of May, I'll get on the sim.
Which is likely at this point.
I'll get on the sim.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
We look forward to it.
I'm not going to qualify. There's not a chance.
What? Why do you say that?
There is not a chance I get in the show because I've done it in the past and I can barely keep the car straight. Forget qualify. I can barely put a lap together.
Well, I mean, some of these cats practice all night. So
yeah,
maybe
and that's what's cool about the game is that it takes skill. It really does take a lot of skill, and you can look at the guys who have done well in our events. They're both our top drivers on Friday night, so it translates. That's what's very cool about the game, and the broadcast is very as real as you can possibly get it to be. So,
like when they came on the air the first night, and they had the pre-produced history of the Stafford Motor Speedway, and they had all the shots.
Chills, right?
It's like, oh my God! It's like this is the actual play. I mean, the clubhouse is painted the same. The scaffolding where we used to announce from is still there. Where the cameras are positioned now. The detail amazes me. The house is on the backstretch and through turn 3.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's mind-boggling.
The only thing they do have to come back and do another scan at some point to get the billboards updated, but what are you going to do?
And I think that'll happen with the success of the current program. All right, let's talk about the show today. Got a pretty cool guest on, a guy that's been around and has seen his fair share of racing here in New England and in New York.
Yes, we got Scott Tapley, our track, the race director of Stafford and also Riverhead. And formerly the race director at Thompson, Lee, and I believe the Speed Bowl as well. I know he's got an interesting background in the sport. He worked on a bunch of teams over the years, has been around forever, and now he commutes all the way from Maine to Stafford every single Friday night. And I'd say since Scott has come in, the racing has improved dramatically at Stafford. Not to say it was bad before, but I think it's more consistent across the board. And I think it's not only that, it's a level of trust by the drivers to the officials. And what's interesting about Scott too is that he keeps such a low profile at this place that it's not common for an official to be almost unknown.
Yep.
He comes in, he calls the race, maybe appears at the drivers' meeting. I maybe talked to him for half an hour after the event in the pits because he's kind of just hanging around, and then that's it. He's gone.
And I think, how long has he been there now?
I think it's been 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Yeah.
And the combination between him and Tom Fox, I mean, there's just really good chemistry among the senior leadership there right now on Friday night that manages these events.
And that's what sucks about this, because we were going to roll into this season if everything was in place. The people were excited, the drivers were excited, the officials were excited, and it was just going to be an awesome start to the year. And But yeah, I'd agree that you got Tom and Jay in the pits, Scott in the tower with Chris Scambato.
Yep.
And it's just a great, everything's going smooth. I think it all stems from just, all those people that I just named are very passionate about the sport. So they care about the success of Stafford as well as any other type of a local racing. So, passion will drive that. If you're not passionate about the sport, you don't really care if you make a bad call. But I'll tell you, Scott cares more than anybody else, along with Tom, who's going to come on the show probably next week at some point. We'll do the same type of kind of meet the track officials deal. So it should be fun.
Love it. Passion for the sport, passion for the racetrack, and it all comes together. I know you mentioned the excitement and how this sucks, but we are going to get racing at some point this summer, hopefully sooner rather than later. I like that last weekend in May.
Yeah, I think that's the best case. And I keep telling anyone I talk to as well is that we're able to adjust our schedule and as much as possible. If we can be a weekday show, if we have to, we can go past the fall final. We can go into October, and the worst case is that we don't have a full 18 event schedule, and we'll take a look. And if we only do 10 events, we'll, we can do something like credit if you have a pass, we'll give you a credit for 2021. 2021. Yes.
2021.
So weird to argue. It's like we've skipped 2020 because we've all wanted to be over. We're talking about 2021. But yeah, we're able to make it work, and we're going to be able to adjust and do our best here. And like I said, this place has been here since 1870. It's going to be here for after this is over, and it's going to be on to the next crisis. And who knows? We'll be back on track soon.
Absolutely. And coming up next, your conversation with Scott Tapley here as the Bottom Shop Podcast Quarantine Edition rolls on.
Okay, we are back here on the Bottom Shop Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Been a bit of a break, but we have a guest here, very important guest to Stafford. Scott Tapley, the race director, the guy who kind of calls all the shots for the drivers, and he's every driver's best friend, but also probably the worst enemy at the same time. So, Scott, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know that I'm anyone's best friend.
So, Scott, kind of start us off for all our listeners that don't really know what your job here is to track, because I will admit you do keep a pretty low profile here at Stafford. So kind of talk to everybody about what your role is and kind of what you do on it, event night.
Yeah, as far as the low profile goes, there's sometimes, recently, I've been there 4 years now, I think. And when I try to come in to go to the track, on a Friday night, they're like, do you work here or something? So
name tag, I guess.
I guess. I guess I run the races from the race control standpoint. So Tom Fox runs tech in that aspect of it, that the competition side of it, and then from the race department side, from pretty much, I don't get there for practice usually because I come from Maine, and it takes on a Friday afternoon, it takes 5.5 hours to get there just based on traffic. And I can't leave before noon because of the situation I have with the rental cars that I get every week. I can't get those before noon. So I get there pretty much as practice is over, right before the driver's meeting. So usually, sometimes I don't even make the driver's meeting. And pretty much just get up in the tower and get ready for the heat races, and pretty much make the calls from there until the night's over, and then get back in the car and start driving again.
So kind of talk to our viewers about what kind of calls are you making. So you're in the tower, you watch the events, the qualifying and the features, and what kind of calls are you doing up there?
Well, I mean, ideally none, right? I mean, that's
True.
the goal is like, but at the same time, if there are no rules, then it's, it's kind of complete anarchy. So, just from the start of the race, it starts and restarts and making sure that everyone's leaving it in the box. And you guys at Stafford have, the best equipment possible. We literally have a camera right on the start and restart box where you can tell. I mean, I probably know before the second row knows when the leader's leaving. And you can tell if the start was good or not. And then at that point, it just becomes, when the races happen, like, I feel like sometimes, I don't know if it's the way it's called or portrayed as like over aggressive driving, and you're putting someone to the back for over aggressive driving. I don't see it that way. It's just basically, if someone gets into someone or whoever initiated the contact, you just make the call based on that. I don't know that it's over aggressive driving to the point where you're kind of placing a tag on someone that they're out of control. It's just a procedure and just kind of the way you see it. I mean, I have my opinion on things, and I'm sure people disagree with it all the time. I mean, that's kind of the process of any call in any sport. But you kind of just want to do it the same for everyone. And it's kind of hard to explain how that works without showing an example of it. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know. It's
like a ref in basketball explaining that how you call a foul.
Right.
You have to see a foul. So I think my biggest question for anyone who does it, especially for you at Stafford with so many cars and the racing is just so close here, is that how do you like doing it? It seems like such a miserable job.
Yeah, I mean, so my wife says a lot of the times, why do you do it? Because you seem miserable every time you come home. And
I guess it's the racetrack a business, because I think my father's the same way.
Yeah, and really the only reason that I do it is because you're trying to make it better. Like,
yeah.
I think there's obviously misconceptions of people think like you make a ton of money doing it. Like, I know for me, it's definitely like someone was saying the other day that they're if the stimulus check that people are going to get, like, oh, that isn't going to do anything. I'm like, man, that's going to be the biggest check I've gotten in 4 years, 6-7 years. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I mean, you're not doing it I'm in a fortunate position where my wife is a scientist. She does really well in her job, and kind of I get to do this, and I kind of look at it, like I said, as trying to just give back to the sport, and not really just try to make it better. Again, people are going to argue one way or the other whether or not you are making it better. People tell me I'm making it worse. I hear I'm fine with that. But if I can look at myself in the mirror every night, knowing that I put my best effort possible to make the racing at Stafford as good as possible, then that's all kind of I need, even though it is kind of miserable sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah, and I think I can definitely understand that same. I think you explained that perfectly, because I'm in the same position where it's like you operate a track, everyone thinks you're a bajillionaire because you operate a track, where it's like little do they know the margins in this game are so slim, and there'll be those nights where the wheels come off and the racing sucks. There was something bad in the concession stands, or something stupid happened and everybody's pissed off, and you go end of the night, it's midnight, you go onto your computer and you see everybody on Twitter saying how much Stafford sucks, how much Scott Tapley sucks, how much the Roots are greedy, and you're like, why the hell do I do this? But then on the other end, you have a night like all these SK events that we've had in the last 5 seasons, where at the end of the night you're like, wow, like we got something special, and that is the reason why we do this.
Yeah. And that is it. I mean, there are, obviously I've been on the racing side of it, at a pretty decent level, you know, winning a Busch North championship. And there was no better feeling than winning. Like, we won the All-Star Showdown out at Irwindale twice. And the feeling of winning that on live TV was incredible.
Yeah, I bet.
But there are some of those, I do leave on a Friday night sometimes having that same exact feeling. You don't get to stand in victory lane and get your picture taken, but you do walk out of there thinking like, damn, that was pretty good. Like, everything went well.
We gave the fans a good show.
Exactly. And I feel like the reason, you know, like, the drivers, they're the key to it all, you know, like they are incredible. Like the stuff that they do is incredible. And at the same time, if you don't give them parameters that they know that they can race under every week, then I feel like they wouldn't be at their best either. And I think that's like what we do, you know, like from a race control standpoint, they kind of know, like they know how much they can run a guy up and still be able to race each other hard, or they know how much they can dive bomb and still be able to make it work. Like if you let somebody just dive bomb in and clean everybody out every week, then the racing's going to be terrible. Mm-hmm. It just is. But if you hold them to a standard of they can drive down in there, but if they knock the guy out of the way and the yellow comes out, they're going to the back, then they know that they have to make it work a little bit better. And the same thing goes for tech. You know, Tom and the guys in tech, they hold everyone accountable to the point where everyone feels like they're on, you know, I'm sure there are people that don't feel like they're on a level playing field, but for the most part,
the case,
for the most part, the cars are there because people feel like they have a fair shot. And you can see it from other places. Like most people are in their own bubble. They know what's Connecticut racing because they're in Connecticut, but I see it everywhere because I live in Maine. I'm a part of a lot of other racetracks. I like, you know, Star, I see what's going on there. I see what's going on at Lee, here at Oxford and Beechridge and places like that. And, you know, sometimes you get in your own bubble and you think things are terrible or car counts are bad or whatever. But then if you look outside that bubble, you realize it's pretty damn good where you got it. And I feel like what is going on there right now from all aspects of the racetrack, the way you guys run it as an ownership group, Tom and Tech, and I think the way we do it in race control, I think it's really a good recipe.
I'd agree 100%. I was talking to Kyle at the open of the show, kind of talking about how we had so much good stuff going for 2020. Yeah. That it feels like we just got stamped on, you know, we just like the most cars. I think in my opinion, I've been involved with this my whole life. It's all I've ever known. And I was telling my dad, I'm like, I think this is the most momentum we've ever had at the track going into a season. And which I guess is a good thing because it'll help propel us past this. Right. You know, it's not like we would be in a much different position if I was saying, you know, there's no momentum. You know, the race is bad. There's no fans involved. There's no people buying passes or tickets. So that's not the case. So that's going to help us get past. But I'd agree that the whole team is so strong and everyone cares so much about it that it's just awesome. It's pretty cool. But I'd like to jump over to you briefly touched on it, your kind of experience in racing. So talk to us about how you got involved. Actually, let's even go to the beginning. What was your first time at a track?
I was probably 6 months old. My dad was racing street stocks at Oxford. And he unfortunately passed away in 2017. So I've been cleaning out the garage. We sold the family house this past summer and trying to take everything that he kept, everything, and finding old trophies. And I actually found a win because I was born in 79. So he won in 1980, May 8th, I think it was 1980. And he wrote on the bottom to Scott, first trophy.
Oh, cool.
You know, yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
And, you know, my mom told me that I was there for all those and whatever. And so, but that's like, I grew up as someone that, sorry, I had another call coming in there. This is the thing. Listen, let's just be real about this. We are in unprecedented times. I'm sitting here talking on a headset. I feel like a fool doing it, first of all. And then I've got calls coming in from potential spam. No, potential spam.
Oh, okay.
I love that. Yeah. So anyway, I grew up as a kid of a low buck race car driver guy. Like my dad raced part-time because that's all he could even afford. And that's how I always look at, like, I think of these drivers as my dad, like the guy that could barely scrap to, things together to get to the racetrack, every couple weeks, hopefully. There was one year where he did run full time and competed for the championship, but that was because my uncle, gave him a huge sponsorship. So, that's kind of how I always, look at things as, you want to make sure, and I say this a lot, at the drive. I don't speak a lot at the Stafford drivers meetings.
Ever.
I try not to. And it's because I'm just not comfortable doing it. Tom's way better doing it than I would be. I do it every week at Riverhead, and whatever, I can do it. It's just Tom does a better job at it. But anyway, like I say though, is that loading the car up at the end of the night the same way you unloaded it at the beginning of the night should be the goal of everyone. Yeah. Now, very few people are going to win. Like only one person can win. But that's how my dad always looked at it, was if he could take a fifth and load the car up in one piece and to be able to come back the next week, because that's how it was. Like if he wrecked, he wasn't going to be able to come back for a couple of weeks. And that's kind of how I always look at it, as trying to, from my philosophy of race directing and things like that. But yeah, so growing up, that's how it was. I was kind of the kid of the low buck racer. And then as I got to age of being able to go into the pits, which it was 14 up here at Oxford, because Tom Curley was running Oxford weekly. He would run Thunder Road on Thursdays, Oxford on Fridays, and then the ACT Tour on Saturdays. So I got to ACT's rules were 14, and my uncle, I call him my uncle, he's Bruce Haley, who raced Busch North and super late models up here. He's a family friend, been our family friend for my whole life. I started working on their car, which we competed for wins every single week in the super late models top division. And that's where I learned, the technical aspects of the sport. And that's when I went to college for it and then got hired full time and all those other things.
Cool. So you were pretty much on a team at a young age then.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the garage from when I was 6 years old to still today. I mean, I still do some stuff for, before this virus hit, I was doing some fabrication at Crazy Horse Racing up here. Okay. And try to stay in it as much as possible from that aspect. So you
grew up in Maine. So when was the first time you saw modified?
At Maine. In Maine, we would have the twin 100s, and I was actually there for Richie Evans' last win, which was 85. He won at Oxford. And then unfortunately passed away.
That was the last. Yep. Oh, wow. I don't know if it was the last win of his career, but it was his last modified tour win for sure, because I think it was either a couple weeks later was Martinsville. And I have pictures of me being on the racetrack during his victory lane. Like my mom's Monte Carlo is parked, kind of next to, they used to let you drive your car right onto the racetrack at the end of the night. And so modifieds, Jimmy Spencer, Mike McLaughlin, Richie Evans, all those guys, they would come up. I think they would come a couple times a year, but the twin 100s were a huge race. It was Busch North 100 lapper and the modified 100 lapper. And I mean, they huge memories of those days. Yeah. And you mentioned that you were on a ACT Tour type team. I believe that was called the NASCAR North for a while, correct? Do I have that right? No, that was that was before my time. NASCAR North was 80 or early 80s. Yeah, is when that switched over, and then the ACT Tour became a deal, late model deal in like 95, 94, 95. And then we ran that, and then I went to college. When I went there, it was Northwestern College out in Ohio, in Lima, Ohio. Now it's UNOH. It's what everyone knows it as, the racing school now. But I went there before it was cool. That's so hip. But so I went there. When it was so affordable. Yeah, right. Got my degree there. I actually went. I did 4 years of school in 3 years. Didn't take the summers off, and then came back and got hired
I volunteered first for Ryan Moore, Kelly Moore's son. He had started racing late models, and then he was going up to Busch North. So I started volunteering for them, working full time at like a warehouse around here. And then, Ryan obviously became a friend of mine, and I worked hard, man. Like I was any available minute I had, I was in that race shop, which was 40 minutes the other way. And I would drive there, and they wanted me to be there at 3 a.m. I was there at 3 a.m. Like I was doing whatever I took. And then the next year when the Busch North thing became full time for him, I became full time in the shop as the car chief.
Oh, cool.
So his final 2 years in Busch North before moving down south for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, I was the car chief. And then when that ended, when he moved down for DEI, he had started his deal there. It's weird. Just the timing of it was the end of 2005. My wife and I were getting married at the end of 2005. And we actually got so how much time you got here?
I know. We got loads of time. We're quarantined, so whatever.
All right. So Ryan had an issue in 2005. We were racing for the championship. It was us and Andy Santerre. And he had an issue at Lime Rock, and it didn't go well with NASCAR, and he got himself thrown out of the Thompson race, which was the last race of the year.
Oh, he must have really messed up then. If he
he got
race.
thrown out, and so we lost the championship because of that. But anyway, I went to Thompson because, like, even though we weren't allowed to race, I just went. And it was kind of well known that our team wasn't going to continue on. Kelly had offered me a job to stay and do some of his rental ride stuff, which was awesome. I owe a ton to Kelly Moore. He's someone I consider family. But at the same time, it wasn't anything that I wanted to compete for wins. We had just done that. And Matt Kobeluk offered me a job that day. At Thompson. Yeah. But it was, obviously a big deal. We're getting married. We're getting married in a month or 2 months, and he wants me to move to Connecticut. We're both from here in Maine, and it's like we're just gonna pack up our stuff and move. And sure enough, we did. Matt gave us a house and everything to live in. So we moved down there. My wife got a job at Pfizer, which turned out to be a game changer for her and her career. And then I worked at Kobeluk's from 2006 to when we closed in 2010, which we saw a lot of good success in that time.
So that's an interesting point. I think a lot of the listeners probably don't really have the concept of being a full-time employee for a short track team, because this is 10 years after you left that, after they closed up. It's kind of not as common as it used to be, I guess. I don't even know if it was that common then, but kind of talk to us about the level of competition, being a full-time employee for a Busch North, now Busch,
now ARCA, K&N,
ARCA. So
Busch East at some point,
which was a great division in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Yeah. There was a stacked field every week there. Kind of talk to us about how being a full-time employee for a local organization.
Yeah, actually, it was a lot of work. I mean, there were times, Glenn Thomas, who's a great friend of mine, one of my best friends I would consider. He and I and 2 other guys were full-time at Kobeluk's in the race shop. So 4 of us full-time. And there were times like we would race. I couldn't even remember what it was, but I know that we raced Adirondack the next week, and I worked like 3 or 4 24-hour days just to get the car ready, because you could kind of half-ass it and probably run 5th, but why do that? Go all in, put in every bit of ounce of effort you have to make it the best it could be. And we won that. We won at Adirondack. That was worth it, because Adirondack not only was it a hard racetrack, but it was a long ride too. So it was just a pain.
It's a weird place.
Yeah, it's a roundish kind of racetrack. But anyway,
that's a track they were gonna. It was going to be a mile, but it's only like a small track on the inside.
The skeleton of it still exists. I look at it on Google Earth sometimes and think man, this was going to be a cool racetrack, but there is literally nothing around it. It just had Yeah. But anyway, like, you know, that felt like it was worth it. You know, like you put in those 24-hour days where I literally didn't sleep. Like you just are digging because we had steel bodies and you don't just rivet on a panel. Like you have to weld it on, you have to sand it, you have to paint it. You had to then, you know, do everything to do with it to make it as best as it could be to go to the next race. And, you know, there were, like, even in the off season was, we would update all of our cars and there were rules changes all the time. The off season was busier than the race season sometimes. So, it was like my dream job. You know, I loved everything about it. To this day, I still hurt that it doesn't exist anymore. And, you know, we looked like we had a ton of money because we had Mohegan Sun and the cars looked awesome, but it was because we put in a ton of effort. Mohegan Sun treated us well, but we didn't have anywhere near the budget of Joey Logano or Austin Dillon. Yeah, that's who we were racing against full time at that time. Like the year that we won the championship, we beat Austin Dillon in Childress equipment. I think third in points was Trevor Bain and Dale Earnhardt Incorporated equipment. There were
like Swindell was in, I think, an Everham car, right?
Swindell was, yeah. And then I can't remember. I guess it was probably Sean Case in Santerre's stuff, and Andy's stuff was incredible. I mean, he's the greatest of all time when it comes to that division. So, yeah.
So that's a crazy time in that division. Kind of. So I always find it so interesting how, because I was younger, I really don't really remember that era. I was in the stands, I watched the races, but like I can't even picture that you have a team where you're able to have 4 full-time employees to build cars to race at short tracks. Like I can't even process that, in the modern day. Not trying to call you old or anything, but
no, I'm 40 now. Yeah, I feel old. I actually, my wife was going out to do the groceries. You know, my wife was like, "Should I do it?" Because she's 38 and I'm 40. You know, like I'm in the age group of worry. Yeah.
But kind of, what do you think changed? You know, from to end that, was it just too much money in the sport too fast? You think that kind of just disrupted the norms of that division? Was it sponsorship dollars that dried up? You know, it went from a big division that was, that could come to our track, to Stafford, and have a good crowd, to we had them come back probably 2015 and we could barely sell any tickets because there's no names in it. So
yeah, I think it just lost its local flavor. It just became, they went to too many. We would go to Greenville Pickens. We would go to Iowa. We raced in Minnesota.
Really?
In 2007, I think. We did a doubleheader. We ran Elko, Minnesota on a Friday and then Iowa on a Sunday.
That's a marathon.
It was crazy. And people credit or say the reason that the series died was because they made it a cup feeder series. That is the opposite. It would have died I was there. Like, it would have died in 2005 if they didn't do that, because we went to Lee, I want to say it was 2005, and there were like 24 cars. And this was before they started letting the cup development teams come in. And it was trending in a bad way. Like, we were, I think one of the races wall got rained out, I think, several times. And there were not a lot of cars there. We were going to go to Holland at one point, and there were just not enough interest to go there. The car counts were going, like, if I know 24 sounds like, or 20s sound like a huge number today.
Yeah, but it was like 50 at Stafford.
Exactly. 2 or 3 years before that, it was a huge number, and it was trending quickly in the wrong direction. So when they infused, I think Joey Logano was the first one. We battled him for the championship the whole year in 2006. And that was what really kicked it off, and it brought a lot of cup teams into it. But eventually, you can only have so many development drivers and put them on the racetrack. Like, you're not gonna, like, so that kind of ran its course there. I mean, they're still doing it to a certain degree, but now they're having to combine, ARCA, East and West, and I love it. I mean, I'm alumni. Like, I love the series. I want to see it do well.
Yeah.
So I hope, obviously in this situation kind of sucks for everyone, but I was hoping to see a good year from them, with combining it all.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. I think it's just typical consolidation of any type of business,
Right.
I guess, where there was a lot of players in a small pond for a short time, and then it had to consolidate. I think that's like any business.
Right.
I think for tracks as well, when everyone goes, the good old days, there was tracks everywhere, but the good old days, there was also drive-ins everywhere. You know what I mean? It's
right.
different. So I wanted to jump ahead a bit here. How did you transition from being on a team, being a fabricator, and going to the tracks, pulling 24-hour days, to looking at becoming an official and race director? How did that transition to, did you ever expect that?
No. Yeah, it kind of happened. So while we had the race shop, I created this little go-kart series. It was called SXR. Like we would, I think Mike, the guy on the race team, bought the first one. It was these little junk go-karts that you would buy at Walmart for like $200. Like you literally sat in them and they had handlebars. And he bought the first one, and we started doing laps around their shop and clocking each other. And that got old. So Glenn bought one. Then I bought one. And then I ended up creating a series in the race shop parking lot where like there were 5 of us, and then it grew to 20 of us. Then it grew to 40 of us. And I was running it and making the rules and doing all that stuff. So I kind of got like, I don't know, I liked it. And it's something I kind of always wanted to do. Like Tom Curley is my hero. Like I grew up watching him,
and for
seeing how
who don't know who Tom is, he was the creator of the ACT tour. And he also he owned Thunder Road, and he operated, I believe, Oxford Plains for a while too, right?
A bunch of racetracks he's been a part of, and sitting there in my formative years of 14 to 16 years old, watching Tom Curley run drivers meetings and run races, and how his ideas were implemented. Like I looked at that and I'd be like, man, that's really, I just like it, Mm-hmm. When I was a kid and I had Matchbox cars, I didn't just like move my Matchbox cars around. I created a series where they raced in a straight line, and then I kept the points, and I kept points for the East Division and the West Division. And like, that's how, like, I still have those papers from back then. So I guess a little part of me always kind of wanted to be, on the management side of a racetrack. But it wasn't until our race team shut down. I was doing some helping. Tom Fox asked me to help out at the Speed Bowl when he was at the Speed Bowl in like 2009. So we were still running full time, but when I had weeks off, I would come over there and basically just have a radio, stand in turn 4, and as a spotter official. And then in 2010, Tom was still running the track as the race director, I believe. But we had shut down as a race shop, and I was kind of just didn't know what was going to be the next move at all. And I actually know this because I saw it in my Facebook memories 2 or 3 days ago. Tom had run, he was running Thompson, I think the Icebreaker. Now the Speed Bowl opened before the Icebreaker at that time.
Yeah, it would open early. It was
right
when it opened. I remember that.
Right. So the Speed Bowl opened, and then the next week was a regular week of racing at the Speed Bowl, but Thompson was the Icebreaker. So Tom was going to run the Icebreaker. I don't remember what it was. My post just said that Fox is running the Icebreaker, so I'm going to screw up the bowl this week, which was meaning I was going to be the race director for the weekend. And it went well, and I think there were a couple more times throughout that year where I ended up Tom was either in the pits or whatever, and I just kind of ran the race. So, and that's all credit to Tom. He gave me that opportunity. And Terry Ames gave me that opportunity. Terry could have easily told him, nah, we're not letting this guy who nobody knows, because nobody knew me. I was the guy from Maine that worked on Cobalt.
This is what, 2010?
This was 2010, yeah. So then in 2011, I think Tom left for NEMA, I think is what he left for at that time, to run that. And Terry had offered me the deal to run the Speed Bowl full time, I guess, as you can consider that. And that's kind of what I did. And again, none of it happens without Tom or Terry giving me the opportunity, but none of it happens without my wife paying the bills. Really, that's what it comes down to. She's the one that, makes all the money.
Allows it to
So
happen.
yeah.
Allows it to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Did you ever have any thoughts of trying to go south at all, or was it always I'm gonna stick around
to work on race cars
on race cars?
Yeah, actually, so in 2006 we ran back to Adirondack. It just seems to be the catalyst of all things, but we ran Adirondack on a Saturday, and the Oxford 250, which I never miss an Oxford 250, was on Sunday, and we're going to drive straight back. Like, the pit gates open at 6 a.m. It was me and Glenn Thomas. We're done with the race, and we're driving straight back, and I actually drove back to spot for Denny Hamlin. Denny was driving for a guy up here, Scott King. He was driving his car, and Scott knew that I was a spotter, so he asked me to spot the car.
It's pretty cool.
And so when Denny showed up, he actually brought Dave Rogers with him, which was his Xfinity crew chief at the time. And Dave said, I don't want anything to do with the car, but as Denny struggled in practice, he kept asking Dave's help. And then eventually we had the thing on the scales, me, Glenn, Jason Ricker, a friend of mine, and Dave Rogers are all working on the car now. And as the day went along, and Glenn and myself kind of, we worked hard for him. And at the end of the day, Denny broke a sway bar like lap, I don't know, it was early. And we all walked back, like I walked back around the racetrack. And I think Glenn was still stuck in the infield on pit road. And as Dave was leaving, he gave me his business card, and he said, hey, listen, you and your friend Glenn, anytime you want a job, Joe Gibbs Racing, give me a call. And I could have easily done that. But at the same time, my wife was pregnant with our daughter. And I don't know. I can admit that I chickened out. I didn't want to, I was afraid to make that move. It's probably a move that I regret in hindsight, to not call. Mm-hmm. Because 2 years later, I saw Dave at Loudon, and he went out of his way to come to me and say, hey, you never called me. And it's like, yeah, idiot, but to that point, we would have, it would have never worked. My wife moving to North Carolina to have a baby all by herself when our family's here in Maine, at least in Connecticut, she could 2-hour ride to be home with the baby. So, in hindsight, it was probably for the best, but yeah, that was probably my best opportunity to go south, in a race team capacity.
That's crazy. I did not know you spotted for Denny Hamlin. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
One time. Yeah. And it was actually pretty cool to the point where we went to Phoenix at the end of the year for a West race, and Denny had won the pole. I want to say it was his rookie year. He won the pole for the race, and he was in they pulled the car over to the side. Like, he had to wait till someone knocked him out of the pole till he could leave. And Glenn and I were pushing the 40 car to the grid, and he said to us, hey, I saw you guys win. He remembered who we were. He's like, I saw your win on speed the other night, because we had won the week before, I think. So even he remembered, which was pretty cool, that we weren't just the two guys who were hanging around the race car. Like, we kind of left an impact with them, with how much work we put in.
That's awesome. So you didn't go south, but you ended up at Stafford. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I'd love to kind of get your take on the current state of the sport too. I know you have a podcast. You talk a lot about the sport as well, and you kind of cover a lot of the ongoing, sport constantly evolving. And I would say for the better in a lot of capacity. Stinks that the new car kind of got delayed a year, but it's okay. Would love to get your opinion on the current state of. Let's start with the short tracks.
Okay, all right.
You've worked at a lot of tracks: Stafford, the Speed Bowl, Thompson, Lee. I'm missing a couple.
Well, I ran MRS. I ran MRS. Yeah, Riverhead too. I ran MRS in 2013. Yep.
So you've gone to a lot of tracks. You've witnessed a lot of promoters, a lot of management, a lot of officiating tech. Kind of, where is this all going? Are we going the right direction, you think?
Yeah, it's unfortunate timing for this question because of everything that's going on.
Back.
But yes, no, I understand that. I feel like some racetracks, obviously not yours or Riverhead or some of the great ones, Seekonk, I think they're doing well as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them will be we'll be fine through this. I unfortunately, I worry about a lot of the other racetracks. I worry about the ones here in Maine, with this shutdown, because they were in a tough spot before this happened. And that's kind of what I was talking about, being in the bubble. Like, you're in the Connecticut bubble and you feel like whatever you see for a fluctuation of car counts from week to week or month to month is like nothing compared to when we would go race at places down south, like Greenville Pickens and things like that. The race that was out before us was like a 5-car street stock race. Like, and that's not it's not and I hate to say that because I feel like it's someone's taking it as a knock on them, but it's just not. Like, we would go to Motor Mile, like I saw Motor Miles close down and people were talking about, like, they didn't even race last year.
Yeah. People don't.
And they only had like 10 races on the schedule for this year, and they were going to lose 3 of them because of the mandate. So they had no choice but to, we went there and their fields were not. Like, their late model division was great, but their other divisions were not. And again, like, I feel like a lot of tracks are going to be in a tough situation. So, like, that's why I say all the time on our show, that get out there and support them, because you can crap on them all day long, but if you're not out there supporting them, they're gonna go away. Like, it's just a reality of it. And listen, I'm like the biggest pessimist, negative. Like, my wife says to me all the time, and this is kind of how I always live, is I think of the worst case scenario possible, and then I work backwards from that.
I think the business of the race cars in the racetracks, that's probably how all of us are, because I think we're the exact same way. Right. Everything is the worst case scenario.
And then, so then you're prepared for it. Like, I'm prepared for a race to go completely terribly. Yeah. Like, that's how I drive to the racetrack thinking everything that's going to go wrong and how I'm going to react to it. And I just feel like I'm like I said, I'm a pessimist at heart, and I hope that like, my hope is really high for the short track world, for the ones that were struggling before coronavirus. I hope that people get out there and support them and use the situation of not having racing to say, like, man, what I really actually don't care if a restart sucks. Like, I really don't care if this guy should have been lined up here or there. I just want racing back, and maybe I don't worry that much about it and spend all my days crapping on it all day long, so that those racetracks can actually come back after, in this environment.
And then, kind of, you've been at Stafford now. This is going to be your 5th season, I believe.
Yeah.
The racing at Stafford, in my opinion, over the last couple years has been unbelievable. I don't think I've watched a lot of laps at this place, and the SKs every single Friday blows my mind. Like, I don't know how else to put it.
I think I sent you a text at one point last year asking you how many photo type finishes we had 6 in a row. It was like, it 6 was crazy.
Total. I think there was like 3 in a row there in the summer and July.
Yeah. And that stresses me out, man. I'm telling you, like,
what stresses you out?
I'm sure,
like keeping a handle on it?
No. Knowing that, I don't know how to put it. Like, I want to make sure that we don't screw that up. Like, whether you see, okay, let's use the 5K as an example. Keith and Ronnie, right? They're battling, and like, I'm watching, like, they're battling, and I didn't even watch it. I'm watching the back half of the field to make sure that we don't screw this up and miss something. Like, is there going to be oil on the racetrack? Is there going to be dirt on the racetrack? Like, we don't want to mess this up because, by something happening that somebody's not looking at. Like, those guys were racing for the lead, and I could see him in the corner of my eye, and I'm watching him on the TV, but I'm watching the rest of the field to make sure we don't miss a car spun in the middle of turn 2 or something like that they could come up on and completely ruin, everything. So yeah, it's just so much easier when someone's out to like a, half a straightaway lead and and they're all by themselves. But that's, I guess, what I was getting at is we don't want to screw it up when the racing's so great. You just want to see it play out and not be a factor of missing something on the racetrack that could have, endangered the finish.
No, yeah, I totally understand that. I kind of have the same. I don't want to call it pressure because it's not pressure, but it's like you have that expectation where you don't want to. You have such a good thing that you don't.
Yeah.
It's your job, my responsibility to make sure the fans show up, and it's your responsibility to make sure the race is good. And we all just don't all want to be the ones to lose it. You know what I mean? To lose the quality. And you've watched a lot of. You've been to a lot of tracks. You know, you watched a lot of racing over the years. Have you ever come across anything that's been that good as these SK mod, even the SK Light mods?
Yeah, no, not at all. It's not even close. Like I tell people all the time, like the two, and it's not a knock on any of the other divisions, because I would argue that the street stocks, late models, and some of the, I don't care if there's
the limiteds are good, man. They're good.
Some of those races are incredible.
Yeah.
But the two modified divisions are the best two racing divisions in the country. I don't care what you say. You can argue with me the World of Outlaws. You can argue with me the Cup Series. I'm telling you, those are the two best racing divisions in the country, probably in the world. I would argue, and I don't know that anyone could give a good argument otherwise.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I know I told Matt a Buckler, probably, this is a while back now, I'm like, this is the best weekly division in the world. I'm like, take me to it. Try, like, asphalt, dirt, snow, grass, whatever. Like, there's nowhere else where those starts, I sit in the stands and I'm like scared to watch it, because it's like, how do they do it when they going down the backstretch and they clear themselves in a little hole? It's like, come on, how did they just do that?
Yeah, and it's and I have the same. I race direct and think of, a lot of the times I think of myself as being that person in the stands of, like, first of all, like, I know I don't want to watch cars run around under yellow. So, like, I know the people in the stands sure as hell don't. So we do everything we can to get back as soon as possible. But I always think of, like, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of things go bad at a racetrack. One of my first memories at Oxford was watching someone pass away, and I've seen it, unfortunately, a handful of times in my life being there. And I think of those, like, while those are car numbers on the racetrack, at the same time, they are a father or a girlfriend or a brother of someone that's sitting in that stands too. And if there's someone out there that is not treating them, that is not treating their other racers with the respect of that person being another human being, like, if they're just out there with the intent to wreck someone, I have no patience for that, because I think of the families that are sitting here in front of me, like, having to watch that and go through that, like that part of it, trying to put yourself as being a fan, I think is important. Like, you guys as ownership, you do that. That's important. Being in that, putting yourself in that role. And I feel like it is for everyone, whether it's a race director, competition director, anybody, you got to think of it as seeing it through the eyes of a fan.
I think that's interesting, because I think a lot of us, the tech officials, if you're employed at the track, the majority of us we are a fan. We are fans first.
Right.
Like, I would say I'm a race fan, number one. Like, it'd be a lot easier if I didn't have to do all this other crap that I got to do. But I'd love to just come here on a Friday night and sit in the stands and watch the races. Like, when I'm in Florida for Speed Weeks, I go to a track every night because I just love racing. I want to be able to go there and check it out. And I think that passion and that, we all care about it. That's what it comes down to.
Right. If you did that, there'd be like 2 or 3 less yellows in the late models.
Hey, I did get my first Scott Tapley penalty.
Had to do it.
I did get my first Scott Tapley penalty, and I didn't even realize I got the penalty till Tuesday when I had to post it on the website.
Well, that's because your spotter doesn't relay messages. That's the problem.
I fired him after that one.
Now, that can't be true, because you guys don't get penalized. You and David get away with everything.
I will admit, right, I did spin out.
That's sarcasm, by the way.
Yes, everyone. Hey,
yes.
Twitter, that's sarcasm. It's not actually true. I don't crash into people. That's why I'm very cautious out there, because want to put that pressure on Scott at the end of the day.
Right.
But on
And I
that
appreciate
penalty, I didn't mean to spin him.
Right.
And
I know you. Yeah. And honestly, I know that 99% of the accidents that are on the penalty sheet are not people meaning to do any of it. But again, if there are no standards to it, then it's just anarchy. I mean, let me use iRacing as a perfect example. You guys have started a series. A lot of people have started series in this COVID situation. And I think everyone within their first week of running their series sent me a message saying, would you give me some tips on how to run, like rules and things like that? Because everyone kind of thought they could give it as a free-for-all with no rules.
I cannot. It's crazy.
That's what would, like, I think people got kind of a reality dose in a 1-2 week period of what racing without rules would actually look like. Like, it's
you need rules.
Yeah.
You need tech rule. You need a rule book. You need on-track rules. It was like, just throw out the rule book. We'd all be out of business in about a week.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know how much easier it would be for me to never have to make a call? Like, it would be so much easier. But at the same time, it wouldn't be effective for anyone. It would be a disservice to everyone that races if you just kind of look the other way in, pick and choose. Well, this wasn't as severe as this one, I know some of them aren't as severe as the other one, but again, if you don't do it the same for everyone, then there's no way to stay with it. And again, I'm sure there are people that are going to watch this and say, there's no consistency to anything you do. And trust me, no one hates, no one is a bigger critic of me than me. Like, I have 16 hours of driving every weekend, whether it's going to Stafford, to Riverhead, and then back home, to think about everything that went wrong. And I record my audio of everything. And 16 hours, I listen to all of it back while I'm driving.
That's madness.
To try and
listen to yourself? You listen to yourself?
No, it's not as much about listening to me. It's about listening to what the situations were. And like,
that's commitment. I love it.
Could we have done something differently? And again, what else am I going to do for 16 hours? I might as well. Fair. I could listen to Howard Stern, which I do, but they only do 3 days a week now, so it gets old. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll do some quick fire questions here, which we do every episode. We'll change it up a bit because you aren't a driver, but it's a little bit different. So
I did have a brief career.
Oh, I did not. Is this on your car, your SX car, every SXR car?
Well, no, hell, I dominated on that. Don't worry about that. And I have a couple championships in go-karts up here in Maine, but who doesn't have a go-kart championship? Like, everybody and their brother is a go-kart champion. Yeah. So I'm not going to consider that. But in 2000 and I want to say it was 2009, Mark Buckeye, who runs the SK Light, he and his brother ran Legends at Waterford, and they had team cars, and he let Glenn and I drive one week, Glenn Thomas and I, and I'd never sat in one ever in my life. I had never gone around the speedbowl. We did a test with Matt, and I drove a Busch car for a couple laps. It went pretty good, but we got in the Legend cars. I was third fastest in practice right off the bat. Well, actually, the first practice I was terrible because I didn't know that. I think it was Adam Gata I was blocking the whole time, and I never looked in the mirror. I never even thought to look in the mirror. I was just so focused on hitting my marks. But the second practice I went out, I was third quickest, and then we started. I started 21st. Glenn started 22nd, and I finished 11th, and he finished 13th. So we were honestly, solid. I would have had a top 10, but I can be. Listen, again, I'm my biggest critic. I screwed up the last restart. I missed shift like an idiot, and I lost my only top 10. So,
hey, that's a solid. You were plus 10 on the day though.
Right, and then I had back surgery the next year, and it is not happening again.
Yeah. So back to the quick fire with a partial driving career then. What if you had to say what is your favorite track?
Well, I have to say Stafford, right?
No, well,
No. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I will
I've
not
listened. I've listened to the other. I've listened to the other podcasts. That's why I said that. My favorite racetrack, of course, is my home track because it's where I grew up, and that's Oxford Plains Speedway. But Stafford is obviously, close second, and then right there with it is Irwindale Speedway. We obviously had some success there, racing there twice, winning there twice, but we raced there for like 6 years straight. And just the area, the racetrack, the racing, the whole vibe of Irwindale was, it's incredible. And I wish it still existed because it was a really good time.
Well, is it open still? I believe it's open still, right?
The track still exists, but the event, the All-Star Showdown, it was just such an incredible race.
All right, who is the best driver you've ever watched, I guess? In your opinion, who's the best? Who's the GOAT?
Well, yeah. So I have to go into regions because in a stock car, Mike Rowe up here in Maine, there's nobody on his level. He's what I grew up watching. Now I can say that I went through waves of being a Mike Rowe fan. Like I was actually fans of the people that tried to beat him at times, but then I was also a fan of his because he was just so great. And he's still doing it. I mean, he's still winning races at Beech Ridge and he's, over 60 years old. So he's the greatest short track stock car driver I've ever seen. And then Ted, of course, in the modifieds. I mean, there are so many stories that I have of Ted in the brief, 5 or 6 years that I ran racetracks that he was a part of. Most of them are conversations that we would have after a race. Like he would touch base. He could run his mouth after a race and tell me everything I sucked at. But as I would pull out of the parking lot, he would call and tell me either that he was actually right or he was actually wrong, and he was just putting on a show. Like he would do that a lot of times where he would never apologize because it's just, that's how it was. Yeah. But at the same time, he would let you know, like, yeah, you know what, you weren't so bad. You weren't so wrong in that situation. And that, again, we could do a whole show on, what happened with him at the end. But my dad passed away about a month before Ted passed away. And the week, he and Rowan, they had that, skirmish.
That was nuts. That was such a legend.
Right. So the next day I ran Riverhead, and I was driving home, and they had run Oswego, I believe. Yeah. And as I was driving home, Ted called me because that was the week after my dad had died. I actually didn't go to Stafford the week after my dad had died, so it was 2 weeks after that. And we talked, I don't know, an hour on the phone of he wanted to know how old my dad was, and like all those things, like. And then unfortunately, Ted at the same age, 2 weeks later, the same situation. I mean, it's, I could go into, it's just an emotional time
for all of us. And I can only imagine how it was in your life at that time. But the one thing that I think is cool, that the last event that Ted competed at Stafford was just a thriller. Remember that? Yeah. 2x2 for like Galco had, I think, was it Keith on the outside?
He had oh man,
somebody up top there for like I want to say it's either
Cipriano or and I know Priest was behind him in third, and Ted was in fourth. And I remember thinking, if anyone other than Priest in this spot, we're three wide here.
Yeah, would have punted him. Yeah,
Priest treated him really well in let them race. Like, and I think that's a lot of why and I go back to why the racing is so good at Stafford is I think a lot of the field knows that if you can't make that work, they're going to take the second a second thought and think, all right, I got to try and make this work, appropriately, because I'm not going to get away with just driving through these guys.
Yeah,
and that race, like you said, is one of the best. I think that, they were 2x2 coming across the line, weren't they?
It must have been 20 laps. They were like that. Maybe 15.
It felt like it. Yeah.
I remember looking at the lap times, and it was Galco was on the bottom, and he knew if he got past in the top, he was done.
Yes.
He
played it perfectly.
Slowed down like 5/10 for the whole, and it was just, that was unbelievable. So
it was one of the smartest races I've ever seen a race winner run, actually. Yeah, Galco did an incredible job there.
All right, so here's the last question. I don't know if you even can answer this. Toughest call you've ever had to make? Is there a call that sticks out to you?
Yes, 100%. And I think about it a lot because there are a multitude of different things that I could have done better to eliminate the situation. It's at the Speed Bowl. Keith had broken his wrist, and Doug Kobe was coming in relief. And going back, like if I knew, I was way too new in the sport to know, or new in this role to know that I should have clarified that he needed to complete the lap. What happened was they went green for the initial start, and then I want to say it was Diego Monahan spun in turn 1, and the yellow came out immediately, and Keith went right into the pits to do the driver change and never actually completed the lap, and switched off with Doug. Doug went out in the race and won the race at that point. And then Keith got credit for it, obviously, because he had started the race, but he actually had not completed the lap. And I actually had no idea. We had so much going on. I had no idea that he didn't come back around. And again, me knowing now what I know, I would have paid better attention to it, knowing we're going to do a driver change here. He needs to come all the way back around. That's absolutely on me. Keith probably deserves one more win at the Speed Bowl. That I should have
went to Kobe. So
yeah, because Keith never completed the lap. So Doug should lose a win, but yeah, no, that I think about that one all the time because that was a real big learning experience for me, knowing that I should have been clearer in how I told my officials in the pits what needed to happen in that situation, and I should have seen forward enough to know they could wreck before they ever even come back to the start finish line. It never even dawned on me that could happen. But yeah, I mean, there are things that I know I don't get right all the time. And like I said, I'm my biggest critic, but that's one I think about quite often.
It's crazy how every couple like events, there's just this obscure thing that occurs where you're like, actually, I don't know what the call is supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Like consult the rule book that's like 20 pages, it's just like,
right.
It happens. That's a good example. So if we ever have a driver change, I know Scott Tapley's got it on lockdown. So
yeah, I've seen enough over the years now with, whether it's Riverhead, Stafford, Thompson, Waterford, MRS, that I feel like I've got them all at this point.
Well, appreciate you coming on the show. I think everyone's going to enjoy this, the discussion, and you're an important part of Stafford, and we appreciate you making the trek down every Friday night, and hopefully we can get back to going pretty quick here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think I said on Sean Kershane's Unmuffled that how important you guys are, your family is to me, and having me there, and your father and your brother coming to my dad's wake meant a lot.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you, and we're excited to get back going. Hopefully it's in a month or so, but if not, we'll be back on after. So appreciate it, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, man. See you.